Auntie of Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Thursday and welcome to our series on hand fastings. Today we're going to focus on the planning stages. But it is time for a little confession. Before I was hand fasted, I was so stressed out by it that I just wanted to drown myself in the nearest bottle of wine. When my husband and I started making our plans, we started out with something really solid. We knew how to execute it. It was all going so well. And then a lot of life happened. And piece by piece, our plan just fell to pieces. And the last months of our engagement, especially the last few weeks, we just couldn't catch our breath because of how quickly we had to adapt to things that just went wrong, that fell through, or went in a general sideways direction. But that doesn't have to happen to you, or to any other pagan who might be contemplating getting hand-fasted or feels like they and their partner are about ready to take that step. So let's talk about the planning phase, and hopefully you will be able to avoid common pitfalls. So to begin with, and you may not like me for saying this, but be practical first and dreamy-eyed second. I know, it's your hand fasting, it's this huge, important, emotional moment, and probably the last thing you want to think about are the nasty dollars and cents involved with it, but just bear with me a little while, and you'll see why. For a start, the entire wedding industry has been completely out of control and out of its mind for quite a while. And they don't hesitate to use the emotions of the occasion to convince people to buy into the idea that they need to spend a bazillion dollars on who knows what, that apparently is absolutely traditional and necessary, and everybody is doing this. It's deeply manipulative, and this is by design. These are people who are trying to sell you their products and services, and their whole mission is to separate you from your wallet, regardless of whether or not this is something you actually want, or if it adds anything to your day, or if you can even afford it. As long as they get their money, nothing else really matters to them. So do not be dictated to by people who want to be able to send you bills. And on that topic, be as realistic about your budget as what you possibly can be. You and your intended should sit down and have an honest conversation of what money you actually have available between the two of you for this occasion. Now, sometimes relatives, often parents, either want to contribute or there's an expectation that they will. However, it is more graceful not to dip into other people's bank accounts. And another thing to consider, even if people have volunteered to be of assistance, once other people's money is involved in something, they tend to want to have a say in the proceedings. You may think at first that you don't mind, it'll be fine, or that you'll be able to hold them at bay or steer them into a more suitable direction if they get pushy. Good luck, because you have just laid the foundation for conflict. It's much easier to only have to negotiate with your intended than it is to deal with a whole platoon of relatives, so think about that very carefully before asking or allowing other people to get financially involved in your day. I would also suggest getting a notebook or getting an app for your phone or tablet, whatever you use to help you keep track of things, and start collecting quotes from venues and reception halls, bakers, photographers, florists, all the things. Get a good idea of what the going rate is so you don't get sticker shock after you get attached to ideas about what you want to have and you're scrambling up to figure how on earth you're going to pay for it all. Instead, realize how much things cost and then look at the money that you actually have and then start making plans about what is actually going to be working for you. Now, after you've done this dreary business of thinking about budgets and money and, the sad, boring stuff, then it is time to get inspired. Your deities might be a source of inspiration for you. You can investigate the aesthetics that are associated with the cultures that your gods were revered by. Research what you can about ancient and modern wedding customs within that region of the world. And this could inform your choice about what day you choose to marry, what flowers you might use, colors to include, different roles of the wedding party, how the ceremony is conducted, what it consists of, the vows you could use, cake design, and that's just for starters. Another avenue of inspiration are the seasons. The time of year you marry will have its own color palette, and different plants will be at their best at that time of year. It just has a whole atmosphere that goes along with it. And if you build around your natural surroundings, it adds to the beauty of your hand fasting, especially if you opt for an outdoor ceremony. And then you could also look to your cultural roots. Many families have their own traditions of weddings. One example would be something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. And it's meaningful to carry on with those traditions. So, not everything is inherently non-pagan or is incompatible with a pagan ceremony. And if you incorporate recognizable traditions, you may make your non-pagan relatives feel a little more comfortable during the proceedings. Now, let's talk a little bit about pivoting strategy, because rarely does anyone get to their wedding day without having to overcome a few obstacles. It will probably be less stressful to accept that problems will arise than to obsess on making sure that everything is perfect all the time. Create backup strategies and be ready to do as much of the work as you can yourself. Now, historically speaking, weddings, handfastings, these were very homemade affairs. It's not going to dishonor your ancestors, and you won't be letting the side down if you decide to follow suit with your handfasting and go for a more DIY, homemade kind of approach. And be prepared to be flexible. The month before my handfasting, my officiants backed out. The music arrangements had to be redone. There was a mad dash to find a photographer who was at an affordable rate. Now, it all came together in the end, but I had to be very, very practical. It was too late in the game to be picky, and I did make decisions that I would not have ordinarily made if I had had more time at my disposal before everything went poof. Now, I don't mention this to cause panic amongst anyone who is getting handfasted. Quite the reverse. Despite those disasters, on the day, my husband and I had a very nice handfasting. We were surrounded by friends and family, and everything did come together, and the pictures are lovely. Now, if I can come through the experience without having a complete nervous breakdown, then I have great confidence that anyone watching this video is going to be able to manage as well. So, a realistic outlook, so far as what's possible in the circumstances, this will reduce your stress and your tears and your chocolate and alcohol consumption. Ideally, this should be a joyful time for everyone involved. And while there is a lot to do, even if you are planning something simple, this doesn't have to drive you crazy or lead you to pulling out your own hair. So set yourself up for success. Now, that is just the planning. Next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about pagan ceremonies, and hopefully I'll be able to toss out a few ideas that you might consider. Some things are subtle enough to where they can be gracefully interwoven to where non-pagan relatives might not especially notice, but you'll know what it means. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I hope you'll be back, and I think that's it for this week. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.